Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is week 3 from the Sands College Football Game Day Show. Week 3, we got the Three Musketeers back here for the week 3 action. We got Andy Hopper to my left, Tom Scavetta to my right. We had a pretty good week of football here in week 2. We'll jump into the weekly recap. Andy, I'll start with you. How's your week going? How are those games for you?
My weekend fucking sucked, Brian. Illinois just ran over by Kansas in the first half. Looked a little bit better in the second half, but still just too little too late. And really embarrassing performance defensively and offensively for the majority of the game. Then the Bears were the Bears again, but it's not an NFL show, college football show. Other than that, there were some good games. uh, Also, I have a grievance.
File it.
I'm filing my grievance. Fuck Tulane, and you can't not announce your starting quarterback is out until right before kickoff. There's no way I would have had him in the parlay if I had known that Pratt was out. I have a close personal friend that works in the Tulane athletic department, so it's not actually fuck Tulane, but it was a bogus move, and I'm not happy about it.
He should have given you the scoop.
Yeah, I guess I should have asked him. I had him at my disposal, ready to hammer it, and I didn't say anything to him. Which I guess I wasn't even keen that he got hurt at the end of the first game, anyways. But the game I'll do quickly for the recap, which I think was the game of the week, was Texas-Alabama. Texas 34, Alabama 24. Guys, is it fair to say that Alabama has a quarterback problem? I'm not 100% sold on Jalen Milroe. I think he's an outstanding athlete. I loved what he was able to do with his feet, but he can't throw. I don't trust his arm. And to be a quarterback, got to be able to use your arm, especially at the University of Alabama. This Alabama team feels a little bit different, fellas. This doesn't feel like the Bama that we have been used to as of late. I don't know if they are that good, but Texas, they look damn good. I was really impressed with the big throws that Ewers made throughout the game. I thought his receivers were pretty incredible as well. Ewers finished with 349 yards, 3 touchdowns. You had Sanders, 5 receptions, 114 yards. Adonai Mitchell, the Georgia transfer, had 2 touchdowns. He was big all throughout the game, 78 yards on 3 catches. And my guy, Xavier Worthy, 5 catches, 75 yards, and a score. Ewers has weapons all around him in this offense, and Texas looked like the better team the entire game. So that's my game of the week. That's my recap because I don't even want to think about my own team.
All right, Tommy.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on, guys? I am super excited for this week. Yeah, like Andy said, Texas beating Alabama, the upset. But was it really, though? I mean, Quinn Ewers, better quarterback. And the real problem is former Notre Dame OC Tommy Rees is there at offensive coordinator. So does Alabama have a quarterback problem? I don't think so because the alternative is not very good. It's Notre Dame's starter from last year. But the Longhorns' defense was incredible. Notre Dame beats NC State on the road. Sam Hartman now 10 touchdowns, no picks on the year, continues to improve his Heisman stock. Andy talked me out of picking Washington State last week when we went over shots and chasers.
Dude, I wanted to bet him, and I talked myself out of betting him right before the game, and I was so fucking pissed, Tom. I'm sorry. A hand up. I did it. I'm sorry.
And how about Miami over A&M? A&M is a bunch of frauds. I mean, last year they came out and they beat a really good team, and then they got crapped on the next week. I mean, again, they only lost by a few points here, but Tyler Van Dyke, 5 touchdown passes, no picks. Aggies with 3 turnovers. Put a fork in Texas A&M for 2023.
Yeah, the one I'll mention quickly. Everyone's eyes were on it. It wasn't a super high-ranked matchup or anything, but obviously Nebraska against Colorado there. Primetime comes through again. The offense looks a little shaky. You know, they still need some of those basic skill set things going, especially with the offensive line. You know, they got Shadur Sanders. There's so many of them on the team, you got to specify. Was running around a little bit, but still completing passes, still making good runs, and I mean their offense just looks explosive. I know Nebraska isn't the best team in that conference, but it was, I think, a legitimate opponent there, and they creamed them 36-14. That was the first game at home, so I'm sure those fans were absolutely pumped that they have a team that they can watch actually win some games. And then yeah, Oregon, who's number 13, brought to the brink by Texas Tech. And one of their former QBs, which I thought made the game interesting. It almost made our shots and chasers last week. Tyler Shuck. Or Show. I don't know.
I think it is Shuck.
Yeah, people used to call him Showtime, so I thought it was Show, but then I heard an announcer pronounce it Shuck, so I'm going with Shuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, he took him to the brink. That was almost a win there in an upset for Texas Tech, but Oregon pulls it off on a late interception for a touchdown. That'll wrap up the weekly recap, and we'll move into our topical segment of the week. It is Hurry Up Offense. We got 3 short, quick answer topics for you here. Our first one, is Texas back for real this time? Andy, you just talked them up. You just talked them up real big, and they did have a big, impressive win over Alabama, so I'll start with you. That was high praise you were giving them. Are they back for real this time?
Yeah, I think so, until they inevitably have an inexplicable Big 12 loss to somebody they are favored by 20 points over. No, but I'd stack up their weapons that they have right now with just about anybody in the country. Obviously, Georgia's going to be Georgia every year. And typically, right, Bama's there, but they just went into Bama and won. That's something not a lot of teams do. They have a legitimate quarterback who has a real shot to play at the next level. And yeah, I don't know. I'm in. I think they are back for real, for real.
Tommy, are they back for real, for real?
If you beat Alabama, you're back for real, for real. Ewers is the best quarterback. I mentioned this 2 years ago on the show, if you guys remember. Best quarterback Texas has had since VHS tapes were a thing, and Blockbuster too. We're talking Vince Young. I mean, this is the best quarterback they've had since him, in my opinion. They got big opponents coming up. They still have to play at Baylor. That's not an easy game, regardless of how Baylor's season is going. Home against number 19 Oklahoma, home against Kansas State, and at TCU. Again, I don't care if some of these teams are ranked or not. These are all tough games. If Texas wins all of them, which they're predicted to, they're in the CFP. They're in, regardless of what they do in their conference title game. I think they're in. So if they win those 4, they're going to make the college football playoff. And I think Quinn Ewers is easily a top 4 QB in the nation right now. So I'm in.
Yeah, wow. A clean sweep for Texas being back. I feel like we just jinxed them here. But I agree also. I think they've had their moments where people ask the question seriously and you get mixed reactions, but this team looks really good on both sides of the ball, which is, like you said, very rare since probably those Vince Young days. So yeah, I mean, it's been a running joke that they haven't had any offensive players drafted in the first round in something like a decade. Bijan broke that curse last year. They don't have him, obviously, but like you said, they've got a lot of weapons now. Worthy looks. You're not going to use Worthy to replace the entire production of Bijan.
Right.
Bijan is one of the best running backs in the nation, probably over the past 10 years. A receiver is not going to get you all that production back, but they filled out the rest of the roster, and they look good on offense. Defense looked really, really hungry. They played really well, I thought, against Alabama. Like you said, Andy, Milroe does look like a bit of a problem for Alabama, so it's not like he's, an elite QB that they're taking down, but they got to him. He was scrambling all over the place, and Texas just making plays everywhere. So I do also think that Texas is back. Horns up. Next up, we have Mel Tucker out. So who is in at Michigan State? Obviously, Mel Tucker asked to leave basically for some allegations that will go to court, so we won't mention them until there is a verdict, but they no longer have a coach right now, and they are on the hunt. So Tom, I'll start with you on this one. Who do you think is a good replacement here for Mel Tucker, who is looking like a great head coaching choice into the future for them?
There's a few people. I think the two front runners are Iowa State's Matt Campbell and Wisconsin's defensive coordinator Mike Tressel. Wisconsin's defense has been good for a while now. So I think those are the two front runners, in my opinion. One wild card I want to throw in there is Brian Hartline, the Ohio State offensive coordinator. Now I know, um, they haven't looked spectacular over the first couple of games, but they're still one of the best offenses in the nation. They have guys like Harrison, Igbuka, Travion Henderson. He's helped turn these guys into superstars. So I think those are my three candidates, with Hartline being a wild card. Um, if I had to pick one, I would lean towards Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach. I mean, hell, it's like you want to play for that guy, you know. So I'm very excited to see what happens at Michigan State. Obviously, they're going to get whiplashed against Washington this weekend, but yeah, I got no problem with any of those guys. So it'll probably be none of them. But since I just went over those three, but
Well,
those are my three.
there's a lot of choices, so they do have
Mhm.
some good pickings. Andy, who do you like to take over the Michigan State job?
So the funniest thing they could do would just be to rehire Mark D'Antonio, which is what I'm hoping happens. Just because he is now a current special assistant for the rest of the year during this transition period. I'm going to throw out a guy, Jason Candle, Toledo head coach. He's 55-33 in his 9-year tenure. He has Toledo as one of the best teams in the MAC. He's a Ohio guy. He's a Midwest guy. Could have some regional respect. MSU might take a chance at him. I don't know. I always like to throw out one of the G5 guys, and then yeah, like Tom said, Tressel, Heartline. Or did you say Heartline?
Yep.
Yeah. And Campbell. I think Narduzzi. He's got a history at MSU. He was the defensive coordinator there. He's the Pitt head coach. Lance Leipold at Kansas. That might be an interesting move. Or Mike Elko at Duke. He has them fucking playing really well.
Yeah, he's been a name that's been up there as well as Matt Campbell's, which seems like he's up there every year to replace somebody because
Yeah, absolutely.
he's a top coach, and Iowa State is just they don't have the talent really anymore. He did a few years ago, but he's got a lot of work ahead of him with his current team. So I think everyone thinks he should be on the move at least, but that contract is locking him down. My pick, I think would be their peak to go for, is also Ohio State offensive coordinator Brian Hartline, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's just too hard of a move to bring someone in from Ohio State to your neighbor state, which is not very well loved by the entire state of Ohio and their fans. I think just as a coach, you don't really do things like that. But yeah, I know he doesn't have C.J. Stroud at the helm helping him put up monster stats on his resume, but I still think, for the most part, they control the offense pretty well at Ohio State with the pieces they have. And Michigan State just hasn't had a dynamic pass game in quite some time. They're kind of similar. I always joke with Tom about Notre Dame's QB situation. They get the scrappy leaders who will fight to the death, but they never have like freak athletes who just have monster arms, monster accuracy. So I think that's a kind of guy you want to go for in an offensive coordinator like Hartline. Don't think they get him though. So I am going with. Well, I thought it was a boring answer, but Andy thinks it's a funny answer with D'Antonio, but only to use as a stopgap for maybe 2 years. I think it's always hard when you fire someone in the middle of the season because you're actively looking to fill the gap, but all those coaches, for the most part, that you're going to be looking at are busy, in the middle of the season coaching their current teams. So I think you bring in D'Antonio, who's got the respect of the community. He wasn't a bad coach there. He knows how to recruit the region, recruit the conference. Use him as a stopgap, just with the agreement that, hey, once we lock down the guy that we want going into the future, you'll step down, and we will, part ways. Everyone's shaking hands, kissing babies, and then Michigan State gets their guy who they thought Mel Tucker was going to be. Moving into the third topic, the NCAA receiving death threats. The NCAA said in a statement Tuesday that violent and possibly criminal threats were directed at committee members after they decided to deny eligibility for Tez Walker out of North Carolina, or I guess you say out of North Carolina. He's not able to play, so technically he's not on the North Carolina roster right now. I want to know, fans are crazy. Fans do be crazy sometimes. Silly or serious, what punishment do we need to give some of these fans to calm them down a bit? Because the death threats probably step over the line. We've seen poisoning of trees down at Auburn, but threatening to kill someone, probably not in your best interest. So Andy, I'll start with you. Is it a serious one or a funny one? And what is your punishment for these people, these lunatics?
Just threaten to kill them right back. What are they going to do?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, this whole situation sucks. So, I mean, he was at NC Central originally, was there during COVID, so he never played. So he transferred to Kent State, played 1 year there. His grandmother is sick, I believe. So he transferred home, cited some mental health reasons, and wanted to be closer to his grandma, which all seem pretty reasonable to me. And the NCAA will not grant the waiver, and that's why it's putting everybody up in arms, because there's just so many other situations where guys are allowed to transfer for a lot less and just walk right on, and it's just like it just doesn't feel right. So I'm all for shit talking the NCAA, but I'm not gonna. I'm disavowing the death threats.
All right, Tom, do you have a punishment for these hooligans?
Why don't the fans do something about it, as far as maybe run laps around the stadium and play themselves?
Oh, I like it.
Really? I mean, you do something about it. You want to try to help this team out? This team needs an additional wide receiver. Why don't you try out? Put me in, coach. Yeah, it's way too far. Serious punishments, banned from attending home games permanently if you try to act upon it. If it's a student, dismissed from the school. Again, if they verbally say it. Look, it's a shame. It really is a shame. I don't blame Bubba Cunningham and Mac Brown for, acting the way they're acting. I would be disappointed. I would be upset. Meanwhile, you got guys playing 7-8 years now, and you got like 25 plus year olds in college, and really this he can't play. There has to be more to it that we don't know. I always like to give the opposing side the benefit of the doubt, or try to see where they're coming from with this ruling. I would like to have a little bit more of a clear picture with it, guys, but I don't know what's going through their heads. I can't speak on behalf of the NCAA. I just think it really sucks for Tez. It sucks for Drake May, who's vying for a Heisman candidate and trying to improve his draft stock. I mean, right now people have him going top 5, but he may want to go number 1. Like if he has a shot at competing with Caleb or whoever it might be,
right,
this could be it. But now it's all foregone conclusion that he's out this year. So he's got to make best with what he's got.
Yeah. I mean, definitely unfortunate. Trying to read into it a little deeper, the reason I saw was that I guess the mental health stuff, I don't know how many people are using it to enter the transfer portal, but it was something that was discussed in the offseason, and they added like new rules and safeguards regarding who could come back, which, I mean, I guess you can argue player safety in that case if, mental health is why they are leaving in the first place. So I understand it, and they did say that all 32 conferences agreed to the guidelines they laid out, so, I mean, yeah. But on the other hand, he didn't play a single game at NC Central, so I mean, like you said, we've got guys who play at 4 teams over the course of 8 years. They got a 5-year-old kid come to the game at that point to watch them play at their 5th team. This kid didn't even play at NC Central because of the pandemic, which I thought was one of the excuses that the NCAA was allowing pretty liberally for kids to transfer. So yeah, I don't like that they didn't let him play. My punishment, semi-serious, probably a bit too painful to enact though. I think that any of these people who are caught or identified, they should be forced to wear their rival team's hat and jersey for the entire season. Just glue that sucker right on there. I can think of no worse punishment than having to walk amongst your friends and colleagues, forced to wear gear, I guess, of a team that everyone around you hates. You'll be laughed at, you'll be ridiculed, and maybe you won't threaten to kill somebody if who's their biggest rival? Probably NC State, I guess. In state,
North Carolina, Duke.
Okay, yeah, or Dukes. I can't imagine they'd have a very happy 8-month period during the season if they're forced to wear Duke gear everywhere they went. That'll wrap up our segment here for Hurry Up Offense and move us into second time in a row Parlay Party. This will be a weekly recurring segment because we are gambling degenerates. Just kidding. We're only putting $10 down here with 2 rules that we have. Minimum of 5 picks. Payout must be plus 1,000. Andy, let's start with you. We're going to have Tommy go last. Because for anyone who watched last week, Mr. Tom hit his parlay, but did not bet. He did not get the bet in time, so not quite a win, but he is technically a week 1 hit, a week 1 expert, so we'll let him go last and hit us with another winner. Andy, you're up. Hit us with your parlay.
Yeah, shout out Tommy boy. I followed the parlay, except changed the last leg, and did not hit, of course. So I was fucking sick. But my parlay for this week, running it back. We're gonna hit this one. I'm going Army plus 9.5 at UTSA. I am taking Kansas State minus 4.5 at Missouri. North Carolina, who we were just talking about, minus 7.5 hosting Minnesota. And then Tennessee minus 6.5 at Florida, and Fresno State minus 3 at Arizona State. I think the Bulldogs get their second Power 5 victory of the year this week. So it's $10 plus 2,369. So 10 to win 230. So
I like
get on it, fellas.
I like it. And ending that parlay with a Fresno State quarterbacked by former UCF QB
Mikey Keene. He looked really good against Purdue.
Yeah, he's a good player. I'm sad we lost him. But yeah, I'll root for Fresno State. They're not on my card, but I like that pick. Might have to add it later, although we saw what happened to those of us who did that last week, so maybe not.
I don't know.
I'll throw up my parlay here, starting with Penn State, Illinois, over 48.5. I'm just realizing now I did not send you guys my bet, so I apologize for that.
Oh, hey.
Yep.
I can't bet on Illinois here.
Okay, that's fine. We will. You know what? I'll throw it off the parlay, but read off the odds for this full because it's a doozy. Or maybe
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted the flow, but
No,
yeah, it's a law here. They won't let us bet on in-state universities.
Okay, got it. Makes sense though. We'll go for the full card though, just since it's already on here. Penn State, Illinois over 48.5. Kansas dropped 34 points on Illinois. Toledo dropped 28 on them as well. I think Illinois is definitely good enough still on offense to put up 2+ touchdowns here, and Penn State covers the rest for a high-scoring game. LSU, Mississippi State over 50. Sold some points. The true over is 58.5. But Mike Leach and Mississippi State teams are very weird, so they could score 1 million points. They could score 20 points. Wisconsin minus 16.5 over Georgia Southern. They're looking for a recovery after a loss last week that wasn't that great. They need a morale boost. Iowa State, very bad, despite having some decent players and a highly sought-after head coach that we just talked about. Going -6, because I think -3 is a little bit of shade to throw on a team who is playing a very average Ohio team. Louisville versus Indiana. You guys will like this one. I'm taking Louisville -10 for the sole fact that Taven Jackson, the Indiana QB, looks like Jackson Mahomes, who's an absolute goober. So Indiana only put up 3 points on Ohio State. Meanwhile, Louisville averaging almost 600 yards per game early in the season, so I like them there. Tulane -12.5. It looks like Michael Pratt is going to play. It looks like they're very hopeful. He dogged us last week, or he dogged me at least, by not playing. 12.5.
Me.
12.5 seems fair here.
I think I called him Spencer Pratt earlier, like the reality TV star. Sorry, Michael.
The guy from the OC or
Yeah,
Laguna Beach or something?
Yeah, I think I said that earlier. Apologies, Michael.
Apologies, Michael, but he didn't play, so retract the apologies. And then the last two here, Tennessee -6.5 versus Florida, because Florida looks so god-awful, and Joe Milton has a cannon for an arm. And then Colorado -23.5. They just beat Nebraska by 22. Vegas, you can't tell me that Colorado State is only 1.5 points worse than Nebraska here. This is for a plus 14,920. $10 wins you almost $1,500 here. We'll have to be adjusted slightly for that Penn State game if Andy is locking in my picks here, but we'll see. I can't imagine it goes under plus 10,000, so we're riding high here. Tommy, over to you. Our hitter on week 1. Do you have another winner for us?
I do, and it's 6 legs this time. We're upping the ante here a little bit. I'm 1 for 1. And only problem is, somebody didn't place the bet. This week, I will place the bet. I'll make sure to get it in literally right after the show. Alabama's angry, folks. They're angry. They're not happy. This is a team that is very, very good, and I have them covering the 31.5-point spread against South Florida. And that bet is a total of -115. Again, you never want to play Bama off a loss. You never want to do that. And unfortunately, I think South Florida suffers the wrath of the Crimson Tide. Next up, they're going to see a lot of spreads this week, folks. I have Duke -18.5 against Northwestern at home. That's -110. As Andy mentioned, week 1, watch Northwestern play a football game. They're really bad. Next up, I have Tennessee and Florida like Brian, but I tweaked mine just a little bit. It's Joe Milton III against Graham Mertz. Well, not a lot of points are going to be scored. I have under 58.5. I think they barely scrape 50. So that's -112, that leg. I have Kansas State -4.5 over Missouri, -110. I mean, Missouri barely beat Middle Tennessee last week at home, 23-19. I mean, you're telling me Will Howard and Kansas State can't beat Missouri by 5 points? Is there something Vegas knows that we don't? Give me Kansas State. Next up, Ole Miss, -18.5 over Georgia Tech. They destroyed Tulane by 17 points. Yes, it was against the backup quarterback, but I really like Ole Miss. And Jackson Dart throws some darts. That's for damn sure. -18.5 comes in at -105. And lastly, Cincinnati, the Bearcats, -14.5 over Miami of Ohio. That is at -105. So 6 total legs combines for plus 4816. That is $10 for $481.60.
Love it. Tommy, you got to bet it. I think all of us might have to bet this one after that week 1 success that you had. And
Ride the hot hand.
I did you a little dirty. I thought about just letting you watch it yourself, but I've written your bets down here in Comic Sans as the typeface because of what happened. But it is a small price to pay for what looks like a pretty good winner. for week 2 here. That will move us into the weekly segment that we like to call Shots and Chasers. It is our games of the week here, the games that we want you to watch. The most exciting games, most likely. Starting off with Andy's team, Illinois, taking on Penn State. You got a high-ranked team here, Andy. The team's struggling a little bit, but you still got talent all over the field. How are you feeling in this one?
Not great, Brian. Last time Illinois played Penn State, I don't know if you remember, a little trip to Happy Valley, 8 overtimes, 20-18 final score. The Illini coming out victorious. They're going to need some of that magic again this weekend. So the defense has not looked great the first 2 weeks. I will say they've been going up against 2 mobile quarterbacks that can hurt you in multiple ways, whereas Aller is very good, but he is more of a pro-style pocket passer. So hopefully you get more pressure on the quarterback. They had a team meeting after the loss against Kansas to kind of be like, what the fuck is happening? What is going on? We're making some adjustments. And hopefully it works out. I think Penn State wins the game, but I'll be rooting my ass off for Illinois and yelling at this laptop I'll be watching it on while I'm at work on Saturday, unfortunately. Been invited to a tailgate and offered tickets, and it breaks my heart not to be able to fucking go. But go Illinois. It's going to be a really, really tough day.
All right, Tom.
Well, as Andy mentioned, that game 2 years ago was incredible to watch. I remember exactly what all 3 of us were doing during that game. We were talking to each other about it because that's how good it was. Penn State coming off a dominant 63-7 win against Delaware, 315 yards on the ground with 6 touchdowns. Drew Aller, turnover-free quarterback, really good in the pocket. I mean, they have a good combo of backs too. Nick Singleton with the 4 rushing touchdowns. He's excellent. Power and short line yardage situations. Illinois lost to Kansas last week at Kansas, 34-23. You know, Luke Altmaier, yes, he had a couple picks, but you know what? If you look past the stat sheet, his game wasn't as bad as people think, in my opinion. Andy may be able to tell you better on that. Altmaier had 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He brings you a different dynamic than what we saw last year with Tommy DeVito. Jerzon Newton, 2 sacks. He's really good. I like Newton. He's going to the NFL next year. In fact, I think he's a day 2 pick as of right now. He's probably the
he's
best
going to go in
player.
the first round.
You think first round? You think that high?
Mm-hmm.
I only say that because he's a DT, but I hope you're right. I hope you're right for your sake because we'll be talking about it. Penn State wins, but you're going to like this, Andy. Illinois covers.
Great teams cover. That's all you can hope for.
They are home. Brett Bielema.
It's an orange.
Really
it is an orange out,
teams.
ladies and gentlemen. Wear orange.
I like that. Well, now I like my over for that game a little bit more. Yeah, I think Penn State is just a little too good here. I don't think the Illinois defense has it all together yet. I know it's still early in the season, but yeah, I mean, Toledo, that you use that as your warm-up game. They didn't look great against Kansas. And then on the other side of the ball, you got Penn State, who just was basically a rest week against a very weak Delaware team that they just absolutely smashed. So they'll be rested and roaring to go. And then, yeah, the Penn State offense just looked really, really balanced this year. Like you guys said, Aller, his presence, his pocket presence, his ability to throw the ball is a much-needed asset for this team. And their defense just looks pretty stout. I mean, they only played West Virginia in their other game, so it's not like they've had huge competition to show off. But yeah, they're number 7 for a reason, so I'm taking Penn State here as well. Moving into the chaser for noon, we have Mississippi State taking on ranked LSU. They lost their big matchup to start the season. Can't lose this game right here, I'll tell you that. It will not end well for them. Probably not for Brian Kelly either. Tom, we'll start with you. Since he is your former coach, who do you like in this game?
Once our coach, always our coach, Brian. I like LSU. they're still 14th ranked in the country right now. Mississippi State played Arizona last week. Arizona is not good. Uh, in simpler terms, I I really like the chemistry that Jaden Daniels has developed with Brian Thomas Jr. 3 touchdowns through the first 2 games, over 200 receiving yards already. Offensively, they performed much better against a much weaker opponent, of course, in Grambling State. And then Mississippi State struggled against Arizona. I mean, they took them to overtime. Will Rogers, he had 3 touchdown passes, but they're a team that relies heavily on the run. Joquavius Marks is a guy who's very north-south between the tackles. He's not going to break the bank on you. And, you know, this is tough because I do think LSU is going to win, but I don't know if they're going to win convincingly because their defense has not gotten to the quarterback. If you give Rodgers time to throw, he's going to make plays on you. I mean, Mike Leach taught this team very well last season, but before his unfortunate passing. And I think that program is still in a very nice spot to make some noise this week. But I do like LSU to win here. But 9.5 is more the question for me.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, I agree completely with Tom. I think LSU wins the game. I think they're the better team, but Mississippi State through 2 games, averaging 221 yards on the ground. Can LSU, sure up against the run and stop them? So Zach Arnett, moving away from that air raid offense, unfortunately, for a more physical ground and pound type game. Excited to see how LSU adjusts and what they do here. I think they win the game, but I think Mississippi State covers the number.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they struggled a bit too much against Arizona. That's Mississippi State I'm talking about, obviously. But yeah, 416 yards per game for Mississippi State. But LSU, the offense is just clicking so well under Jaden Daniels. Over 540 themselves. But the defensive side of the ball, Tommy, I agree. I'm a little concerned about it. They allow over 400 yards per game, 150 of it on the ground, which you typically don't see from those defenses like your LSU's and your Alabamas with that ground game defense. So that's a little concerning, especially since, like you said, Marks is, a downhill runner. He will destroy you if you can't wrap him up. So that's a bit of a concern there. But I just think LSU has too much. Will Rogers is very capable through the air, but Jaden Daniels has just grown so much. If LSU can get to Rogers, I think it could turn into a blowout. So we'll see. But like you said, Tommy, they haven't done much. Only 1 sack on the season so far. So, but I'm taking LSU to win this game. Moving on to 3:30, we have your number 1 Georgia Bulldogs taking on Spencer Rattler's South Carolina Gamecocks. Andy, we'll start with you. Can Rattler rattle the Georgia Bulldogs?
Don't think so. Last season's game, 48-7 in favor of the Bulldogs on the road. I don't know if we see that bad, but let me just say this. The UNC defense sacked Rattler 9 times when they played. What the fuck is this Georgia defensive line going to do to him?
Yep.
They might kill him. He might. I will say Rattler's so far this year, he's completing 83% of his passes, over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's not terrible. And Carson Beck, the new Georgia quarterback, completing 72% of his passes. So 2 quarterbacks that are performing pretty well. Georgia averaging 473 total yards per game on offense, albeit that's against Ball State and UT Martin. Shout out Funcy, Indiana. But yeah, I think the easy pick here is Georgia, and I'm taking the easy pick.
All right, Tom, how easy is this pick?
Yeah, look, the Cox couldn't handle the heels. So, yes, they beat Furman, and Rattler looked good, but that's his job. to look good. I mean, there's no pleasure in looking good against Furman. Um, Georgia's going
What do
to
you have
win this
against the
football
Paladins?
game, and they're going to win big. I like Xavier Leggett for South Carolina. He's been a beast through 2 games, by the way. 296 yards. He learned well going up against guys like Cam Smith and Darius Rush in practice. But again, the question is Carson Beck. Um, what's he going to look like? I mean, he looked very good against Ball State last week, but he did have that one interception where he kind of forced the football. And he hasn't proven yet that he can get Brock Bowers going. I'm looking more for intangibles in this game than the final score result. I want to see how Beck looks. We all know Georgia's going to win, but how is the offense going to look? Will Brock Bowers get more than one catch for 3 yards? That's the real question here. But Georgia will win. And you know what? 27 and a half. Yeah, they win by 30 at most. I think they barely cover it. I think they barely cover it.
All right. Yeah, I think this one is a pretty easy pick as well. Although we have seen number one ranked SEC teams uh, get blown out, or not blown out, but we'll say heavily defeated by an underdog, by scrappy QBs like this. I know Manziel is probably a little better than Rattler, but that Texas A&M game against Alabama comes to mind. Um, yeah, maybe not the greatest comparison. Rattler is nowhere near Manziel. Take back everything I just said. Um, but yeah, I think Georgia's going to destroy him. Carson Beck is obviously the question mark here. I knew you would be watching Brock Bowers there, Tom. So I do have him marked down here. Like you said, those receptions, those yards, not great. He's not been able to find Bowers as of yet. Only 6 receptions for 81 yards. Only the third highest ranked receiver in terms of receiving yards on the team. So I'm not sure what that says yet. Like Andy said, 72% completion percentage. He's finding his guys, albeit not for monster plays or anything. But bringing those other guys into the team as it's your first year at the helm, I guess can be good because they have 5 guys with over 70 receiving yards so far. Again, kind of like what we just talked about, getting to the QB. They only have 1 sack. But they do have 4 interceptions so far, so that secondary looking very good. And if that line is getting to Rattler, that 4 is going to turn into 5 and 6 and maybe 7 interceptions by the end of this game. So I'm going with the Georgia Bulldogs as well. Moving into our chaser for 3:30, we have Michigan State, who is currently somewhat coachless, taking on number 9 ranked Washington. Andy, we'll start with you. Who's winning this game?
Yeah, so they have their interim head coach. It's Harold something, I think. I don't remember his last name. So he has an opportunity to step into the likes of a Coach O or Rich Bisaccia, as in the interim coaches. That there's just something about them, and they just fucking come in, and the team rallies around them, and they win football games. Don't think that's going to happen this week. At least I'm not picking Michigan State. Michael Penix, he's the reason. Washington quarterback, he's been incredible. He's got 8 touchdowns on the year, only 1 interception, 73% completion percentage, 859 yards. And by the way, the offense is averaging 566 yards per game. So it's going to be tough for Michigan State to top them. I love the Huskies in the matchup.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Andy said it. Penix Jr., the 8 touchdowns, he's thrown up for almost 900 yards in just 2 games, and his receivers are incredible. Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan are elite. Each of those guys have over 200 receiving yards on the year, so both are averaging over 100 per game already. Dunze with 2 touchdowns and McMillan with 3. McMillan projected to go early in the draft this year. I'm not sure what year Dunze is in, but look, Tucker gets fired a week after the Spartans beat Richmond 45-14. I think Noah Kim is a decent quarterback for them. Again, he's nothing special, but he managed it pretty well. He threw 3 touchdowns. Nathan Carter had 3 touchdowns on the ground. He has 4 rushing on the season. and their defense had 7 sacks. So it's not like Michigan State is this god awful team that everyone's shitting on. It's not like they're South Carolina or Florida right now. I think they might be a step above Florida, but I, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Michigan State to make my predetermination. I know they struggled the first week, but yeah, Washington's going to win the football game, and I do think they'll cover the spread, which goes against everything I just said. But I mean, it just goes to show you how the offense for Washington is really elite. They're an elite offense. They're going in to Michigan State, and Penix Jr. probably throws for at least 3 touchdown passes. But I do think the Spartans keep it close early. If covering for 1/2 was an option, they'll do that.
Sure. Oh, Michigan State first half spread. Hammer it.
You heard it here first. Tommy's pick, and Andy gives
First
the
quarter
hammer.
and first half spread.
So we get the double doozy. Everyone watching, you got to lock that one in. Yeah, I'm going Washington as well here. Apologies to everyone watching this because, well, I didn't make the schedule. It's just a weak schedule this week, all right? This is what we got. But yeah, Penix Jr., just one of the best QBs in the entire nation. I love what Andy said about interims because they're just absolute wild cards. It's a wild card situation. Anything can happen when you have a coach leave and someone steps in who just has absolutely nothing to lose. The trick plays come out, the unknown players come out of nowhere to have star performances. And like Tom said, it's still a pretty decent team talent-wise. I just think Washington is too good, and the offense just operates too efficiently under Penix Jr. Unfortunately, the thing that Michigan State is best at, despite only having played Central Michigan and Richmond, is their run defense, which Washington isn't going to rely on as much as Penix Jr.'s arm. So I think we probably do see an absolute smacking here over Michigan State and interim Harold something, as Andy has deemed him. Moving into 7:30, we have Florida taking on Tennessee. Bit of a fan rivalry here. This isn't really the biggest rivalry, but these two fan bases do not like each other. But one team is doing well and one not so well this year, and that is Tennessee taking on the unranked Florida Gators. Tom, who do you have in this game?
This is a tough one. I mean, Florida has a couple of solid running backs. They have Trevor Etienne, looked really good last week, 84 yards and 11 touches, and then Montrell Johnson Jr., 119 on 15 with 2 tutties. So the Gators had 327 rushing yards in the game. So if they can run the football like that against Tennessee and keep their offense off the field, they have a shot to win. And there's a reason why this line's only 6.5 points. Ricky Pearsall Jr. had a really solid game, 123 receiving yards, over 200 on the season. And Tennessee won by just 17 points against Austin Peay at home. Yeah, that is not the best result that you would have liked there. But the good news for them is Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, really solid 1-2 punch. Joe Milton II, he takes care of the football. Tyler Barron on the defense is solid, 3 sacks on the year. Florida typically, I wouldn't say this year or even last year after the Utah game, but they're notorious for upsets in the swamp. They're notorious for it. But is there enough on this team, molding in a new quarterback? It's not like Anthony Richardson is there anymore. It's Graham Mertz, guys. Florida's not going to win, and they're not going to cover. It's Tennessee.
All right, Andy.
I'm also taking Tennessee. They're in my parlay. I think they win by at least a touchdown. I will say Mertz hasn't been awful. 74% of his passes, 526 yards, 2 tutties so far. So not a lot like in the touchdown department, but 74% completion percentage isn't terrible. But yes, Tom, I do agree. If you go back and look at his track record, it doesn't make you too confident about this game. Tennessee's 4th in the nation in rushing, So if they can get their run game going, it's just going to take more pressure off Milton. Maybe they open up a little bit, let him sling it. We'll see. But I love Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee here as well. I just think they have too many weapons on offense. And when you have that under Josh Heupel, who himself is a bit of a wild card, maybe that's who Michigan State should try to steal. The offense can just get absolutely crazy. And, you know, when you have an inexperienced defense like Florida's, who looks confused a lot of the time, I think Joe Milton's going to be able to exploit the hell out of that secondary. I expect a ton of deep balls to exploit that, those CBs, those safeties, and I think Joe Milton goes over 400 yards in this game, despite Tennessee only having a 54% chance to win this game. So everyone thinks it's tight, but I mean, I don't know. Tennessee just has so many weapons. Jalen Wright at running back, averaging 9, almost 10 yards per carry, just been an absolute animal. And then Ramel Keaton at wide receiver number 1, hooking up with Milton. They look really good. Graham Mertz looks average, so I don't know how the Florida offense generates enough to keep up with Tennessee here. And then our last game on the slate here, we have Arkansas taking on the Fighting Mormons of BYU. Andy, we'll start with you. Who wins this game?
Yeah, I think this is an Arkansas victory here. KJ Jefferson looks pretty impressive so far to start the year. He's got 5 touchdowns in 2 games. Keaton Slovis, the BYU quarterback, shout out. Did not remember he transferred there. So, you know, they've got 2 wins so far, but it's over Sam Houston in Southern Utah. Not the greatest, and through 2 games, they're only averaging 79 yards on the ground. That is not a lot, and it's going to have to improve. You're definitely not going to beat an SEC team doing so. So give me the Razorbacks.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, the Cougars are going to have a lot of trouble finding their way in this game. You know, Slovis, solid start to the season for him with BYU as far as accuracy goes, but they don't run the ball well. Their offense, they really don't. You can't rely on Isaac Rex to produce what he did last week every game. He's not going to have 100 yards and a touchdown every single week. That's not who Isaac Rex is, at least not yet. KJ Jefferson, definitely the better quarterback in this game. The Hogs had 7 sacks last week, so I think Arkansas is in a good spot to blitz a lot and cause a lot of disruption. They have a really good players. Andrew Armstrong, 3 touchdown receptions already on the year, and Isaac Tesla, really solid game last week. Not to mention, they have a great linebacker who will be playing on Sundays, gentlemen. Jaheim Thomas, 20 tackles, 1.5 sacks for the first 2 games of the season. He is all over the field. He patrols that second level of the defense very, very well. Give me the Hogs to cover by 8.
I as well am taking the Hogs here. KJ Jefferson just has all the talent. Bit of an Anthony Richardson type. Maybe not as athletic, but has more of a presence on the field, more of a mindfulness, higher football IQ, I feel like. And Tom, like you mentioned, BYU, their running game, not great, but Arkansas's run defense so far is producing 79 yards per game for BYU, and Arkansas only allowing 45. So I don't know. I feel like we might see less than 50 rushing yards here from BYU, and I don't know. Keaton Slovis is pretty good. I don't know if that's enough to help him out. What's he got to put up? Maybe 400 plus yards if his run game's only getting him 50.
Probably.
Yeah, so I don't think they have enough of a complete offense here to take on the Hogs, whose defense also looks pretty stout. So I'm taking Hogs. That will wrap up our show this week. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the games. Andy on my left, his links down below in the description. Tommy on my right, his links also down below. Give everyone here a follow and a like if you could. If you made it this far, I think we deserve it. And if you're taking our picks, Tommy won you a lot of money probably last week. even though he did not lock it in himself. But I think we gave you a bunch of week 2 winners. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see everybody next week.